I'll get cracking. Can I ask any members or officers in physical attendance with an electronic device to mute it to avoid feedback, and any remote participants to keep their microphone off unless they wish to speak. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and the staff may use body-worn cameras within the premises. Data captured during these recordings will be processed and retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy, and the meeting recording may be published on the Council's website. Members accessing the meeting remotely should use their SBC or KCC laptop to participate virtually. If joining using the link on the website or on a mobile and tablet device, it's not always possible to identify you, and you may not be recorded as in remote attendance. So welcome to this ordinary meeting of the Housing, Health and Communities Committee. Have we got any visiting members? No. So the following members of staff are in attendance: Head of Housing and Communities, Charlotte Hudson; Community and Partnership Manager, Sarah Jane Radley; Policy and Communities Manager, Steph Curtis, who is joining us online; Housing Standards and Assistance Manager, San Nguyen; and Democratic Services, Tim Neal. Hopefully everyone is aware of the emergency evacuation process. If anyone does need any support leaving, we know about that, so it's fine. Can I have any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor MacDonald, who is being substituted by Councillor Palmer, and Councillor Golding is being substituted by Councillor Wise.
Thank you very much. Item number 3 is the minutes. So can we please approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of January 2026, minute numbers 615 to 629 as a correct record? Perfect. Item number 4 is declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest they would like to give? No? Fabulous. Oh yeah, Councillor Palmer.
I do partake in the lottery, so I suppose it's a pecuniary interest if I win.
So you might notice on your agenda that the it does reference the minutes from the extraordinary meeting, but they are not with us at the moment, so they will come to the next meeting. That's just in there in error. Item number 5 is matters arising. There were no matters arising from the previous meeting, so if everyone is happy, I'm just going to crack on to agenda item 6, unless anyone else has any matters arising. No? Great. Okay, so item number 6 is Chair's briefing. First of all, I wanted to hold a little bit of space just for a moment to recognise the passing of 2 young people during the recent meningitis outbreak. It's a truly awful thing for the families and friends, and for both the University of Kent and the Queen Elizabeth Grammar School communities. I wanted especially to thank the NHS staff that have worked really hard to distribute the vaccine and antibiotics to the officers for attending meetings and briefing councillors on the situation as it has unfolded. That I think that's been quite a triggering experience for a number of people, given the kind of collective trauma that we went through with the pandemic. So just wanted to send our best wishes to the families and friends of everyone involved, and also to extend our condolences to our colleagues on the Community Safety Partnership who have recently lost one of their Kent police officers in the line of duty. Again, our thoughts as a committee are with their friends and family at what is a horrific time for them. So it wasn't long ago that we met, but I will cover a few bits that have happened. Councillor Harrison and I met with the ICB to discuss the much reported GP withdrawal from the Beachfield site. As at this time, the ICB has assured that no decision has been made, but we will keep in touch with them so that we can keep a close eye on things moving forward and make sure that the Isle of Sheppey is properly supported in its need for GP provision. The Kent Health and Wellbeing Board had a day with the Local Government Association where we looked at working together to make the board a little bit more dynamic than it is at the moment. There was some agreement that that it has some statutory responsibilities, but actually we'd all like it to be a bit closer to community and a bit more involved than it currently is. So we had a day where members from different health and wellbeing boards from other areas in the country and some local government association staff came and chatted about some kind of best practice models and what we could look to do. So it's good that there's lots of interest in the room for improving it, and also appetite to have a lot more community involvement in the health and wellbeing board. So that was a positive day. We had our pre-agenda and service update meeting with officers, and big thanks to those that attended that. And I attended the board meeting of Rainbow Homes as an observer, and there is an update report on the agenda this evening. Kent County Council and the University College of London Institute of Health Inequality launched the UK's first Marmot Coastal Review, and thanks to the officers for attending on SWAL's behalf for that event. The Marmot Review aims to tackle really deep-rooted inequality in East Kent's coastal areas. Myself and Councillor Harrison also attended the quarterly chairs and vice chairs update morning. Does anyone have any questions or comments on any of that? Yeah, Councillor Nandy.
I'd like to just take this opportunity to thank both you and Councillor Harrison for attending a meeting with the ICB about the healthcare provision on Sheppey. It is absolutely appalling as it is, and losing that facility will really have a detrimental impact on some of the most vulnerable people within our community. So thank you for your efforts on that, and I hope that the decision is to keep the site open for local people to use. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just to briefly touch on the things that we've discussed the possibility, basically, if there was a decision to be made, there would need to be quite a lot of public consultation on it anyway. And I'm prefacing that with the fact that they categorically said it's not happening at the moment. But we've said as a council, we'd like to help with that consultation if it comes to that, which at the moment it isn't. So yeah, that's where we are with that. Okay, item number 7 is the forward decision plan. So this gives us an overview of what's coming up over the next few months so we can plan our work. As you can see, it includes quite a range of kind of different items which we cover as a committee. The recommendation is to note the report, but this is an opportunity for anyone to have any comments or suggestions on the forward plan. Does anyone have any comments? Suggestions? Yeah, Councillor Nandy.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to eat dinner before the meeting, so I'm going to be picking as we go. Following the declaration of a mental health crisis last year, I'd like to take something forward on that. I'm not entirely sure exactly what and how it would work, but I know that the MP is looking for a safe haven. I know there's ones in Medway, Maidstone and a couple of the other boroughs, and essentially it's a space for people to access meaningful mental health support. So I think that perhaps trying to engage with the MP to see the sort of progress that he's making with that, and then try to link that back to this committee to try and get somewhere. You know, there's plenty of shops on our high streets at the moment that aren't being used. One of those spaces could be used for something that will actually benefit the community, rather than it just being an empty shop. I think that would also be a good way for the council to address the crisis that we have declared. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Nandy. I wondered within that, and forgive me that I don't remember, were there any direct asks for the council within that motion?
Without going back and I probably should know, but I can't think off the top of my head. But I think that a lot of it was around comms. And a lot of it was around working with schools and local groups, which I think if a safe haven were to open somewhere, if it opened on the Isle of Sheppey, I could name some groups that would be able to utilise that. If it opened in Sittingbourne, I'm sure that some of the Sittingbourne councillors would know local. So I think that would still tie in with what the motion was asking for. Yeah.
Yep. So the officers do you have a view on if we have capacity to add that to workstream at the moment?
I think I would need to go away and have a look at the motion and to see, just do some initial view and come back to, probably come back before the next committee with a response on that, just to establish what we can do and what I suppose what's in our remit to do. Not knowing how the mechanics behind the scenes of safe havens work and what clinicians you might need and all of that element, on whether it's more of an ICB commissioned service, just to see again what the parameters are around that. Thank you.
Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. So, going on from what Councillor Nundy has said, whether it might be worth having a think about. I know we've had meetings in here with our landlords, whether it be worth getting all the groups connected with mental health, all the charities we've got out there, Mentalk, Her Voice, Next Youth, all of those, get them in a room to discuss what is out there, what is available, what can we do to support the work that they're doing. I'm sure we would get a lot of organisations involved and with a lot of us there as well, so that we can carry on. I totally agree with you, Councillor Nundy, through you, Chair. The motion that we had concerning the mental health emergency is one that is only going to get more prevalent going on. All we had to see is what happened last week when we saw that the mental health of students, parents, everyone in our community was affected by what happened at the University of Kent. The very sad thing that happened there. So we know that this is something that we really need to be looking at, but whether we can get people together in a room to discuss it and talk about it and share resources, that might be just an idea, Chairman. Thank you.
Charlotte, did you want to come in? You look like you wanted to say something. You can. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds great. What I think would be helpful is to understand whether something like that already happens and we're just not at it, because it could be, that we have the Community Safety Partnership, which we're a member of, where we have that kind of combined working. So, I mean, I'm happy as chair to go away and have a look at whether that's already happening. I know that it did previously when I was deputy cabinet member. There used to be something fairly similar that was quarterly. So it might be that it's still happening. We just don't know about it. But if it is, then that would be good. Do you know? Oh, perfect.
There's the local mental health network, something like that. That exists, and it's delivered by EK360. That does still happen quarterly. And I know that there's an opportunity for us to have a discussion with them about working more closely.
If I can, Chair, sorry, I'm going to come back. Sorry, SJ. I just think this is such an important item here that as a council, we should be going forward and supporting what's being done, and just get people together to discuss this, because this is potentially life-changing. The fact that a number of us in this room didn't know about quarterly meetings, that concerns me. I know we can't know about everything, but this is something that we've already flagged up as being an emergency. So I look forward to hearing from you, though, SJ. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Watson. I think if we can have a chat with EK360, that would be really helpful. Are you happy to do that, or do you want me to do it? Are you happy to? Great, thank you. Okay, any more comments, questions on the forward plan? Yeah.
Yeah, just to sort of add sort of an admission on here, apologies, I didn't notice it, but we are looking to bring forward a procurement of the CCTV tender for the extension of the control centre. That is coming forward to the extraordinary meeting that's been scheduled in April. Because the TA report's always on here, so it sort of comes off the forward plan and comes back on. That will also include in the summer the review of the temporary accommodation purchase programme and whether there's any capacity for further elements, and possibly looking to bring forward the housing strategy, even though it's not due for renewal in until 27. The government strategy does change things somewhat, and I think it probably puts our current strategy out of date. So rather than waiting for our current strategy to expire, I think it might be wise to bring that that forward on an earlier date, and we're just looking at some of that at the moment. So potentially bringing that forward too. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte. I did hear some what extraordinary meeting comments. I'm not deliberately keeping that from all of you. I'd quite like you to be there, but we literally only agreed that last couple of days. So a formal thing will go out to say that that's happening. It's to do with the timeline with the CCTV. Like I do want you all to be there. I don't want to hang out on my own on it. So that wasn't a deliberate attempt to fool you all.
Yeah, have we got a date for that?
It's in April. Do you know what date? Can I remember what date it is? I can look it up. I'll look it up. Do you know Tim? Perfect.
Councillor Harrison, for your joy and entertainment, it is at 6 p.m. just before the police commissioner's briefing
Oh yes.
to members. So there'll be plenty of people. Thank you.
Right. So hopefully, what was the date? Can you just remind the actual date of that, please, Tim?
to say the
21st. Lovely. Okay. So hopefully people will be able to make that. Okay. I am going to propose that we note that then please noted. Great. Item number 8 is the Empowering You strategy delivery update. So this report kind of gives a snapshot of progress against the community development strategy, which covers things like skills, health and wellbeing, community resilience and partnership working. It also highlights some of the challenges around resources and funding. This is a report for noting, but I think it's a good opportunity to ask questions and to look at it. So SJ, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. So the report provides an update under the 4 priority areas of the strategy, which are creating skilled, educated and working communities, growing healthy communities, empowering stronger, sustainable communities and developing strong partnerships. This work has been across the whole sort of directorate area, and we've seen a really good improvement in partnership working and cross working, and I think this strategy has allowed us to develop that. And there have been some really key projects and work that's noted in the report, and the full list. Well, a full list is attached, but there probably is more. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. At the Seashells steering group I was at recently, we had a long discussion on improving community resilience. Resilience. And we spoke at length on volunteers, and one of the issues that came forward from a couple of the parents as a concern as to why people don't volunteer in some areas was the issue of DBS. Oh, I still want to say CRB, DBS checks. And it came up at standards last night that we really need to demystify this issue of DBS checks, because I'm not saying words are one syllable on half a page of A4, because people think that, something that we were coming up with examples last night of, something that happened when you were 14 at the other end of the country, and is that sealed or does that come up, and is it if things are not exempt, expired, stuff like that, and I think that, is it a case, because what was said last night at standards as to the process, Joe informed us for us, wasn't the process that was spoken about at this meeting. So, is there a bog standard, step 1, this happens, step 2, that happens, step 3, that happens, It's only if step 5 you was inside for 30 years for a murder that, you know, this will, regardless of how long it will still appear, and it will mean you can't do anything. You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I'm happy to work with the voluntary sector infrastructure company who actually carry out these DBS checks, and we can do some of that demystifying work. So we can outline what the process is and what it involves, and I can work with CBS to look at that for you, and Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, SJ. Thanks, Chair. Because I think it's just the thought or the words, and if it can be demystified, it's possible that a lot more people would come forward. Oh, it's nothing, you know. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Nandy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, SJ, for producing this. This is actually really handy. Looking at Appendix 1, yeah, there's some stuff on that needs a bit more work. There's some stuff on it that I think probably needs quite a lot more work, but there's some stuff on it that's really taking shape, and it's really starting to work. I was honoured to be selected to speak at the Youth Democracy event because there was some really good engagement. Some of the political parties that were thought up by the officers were a bit ropey, if I'm being honest, but it got young people talking about the local area. It gave us ideas. And more to the point, I'm going to save this on my phone, and the next time I'm in the pub and someone says to me, what are Swale Borough Council doing for us, I can just get this up and say, well, yeah, we're working with local groups, we're working with local people, we're really trying to push certain things. There's some really good stuff on here. You know, neat provision. There's so many good things on this that you might need a bit more of a push, but we all know that's due to funding a lot of the time, and we can't control the amount of funding that we get without massively hiking council tax. Nobody wants us to do that. So thank you very much for this report. This shows how much of a good job Swale is doing, and there's some bits on here that I didn't even know about. So that's probably a bit embarrassing, but it is good. So thank you very much for producing this. This will be really useful. And I think that everyone that's on the council, whether on this committee or not, should read this, because it does show the good work that the council are doing to support residents in Swale. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Nandy. Yeah, part of the having this report come forward is celebrating the work that we do publicly, because I think lots of it happens, and there's so much hard work that the officers do that we don't celebrate enough, and things are really difficult for a lot of people, and we play a really important role in being able to support people when they're really vulnerable. So I think it's always worth recognising good work when it happens. Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Nundy. I think that the work's been quite good. I was just going to talk on two things. I was going to ask about the community assets, the Lakeview. I believe that was mentioned at Economy and Property, so we know where that, or there's more to that than just what's in the one line in the appendix. And the Meads Community Centre, it'd be nice to know how far down the road they are. But I was just going to say on DBS, a lot of people under the misconception that if you get a DBS back from someone who's got something on it, that you can't employ them. It's in the eye of the beholder. It's down to each employer with the information they've got to make an assessment. And it might be that you have an employer who is employing someone and he had a previous record for financial embezzlement. Well, if the job doesn't involve finances and doesn't put finances at risk, that might be a reason why you look at it and can employ. If I run a nursery and there was some sort of history of child abuse, then you'd look at that in more serious of a light if you were going to take them on. So DBS, it's very hard to say to someone, can you tell us exactly what we should and shouldn't be doing? All it is each person has to make an assessment on what they've got in front of them. But going back to the community assets, it would be interesting, maybe not now, but just something highlighting what's progressing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Palmer. So both of these were actually some legacy issues with some of because we constructed these community centres to resolve. So we've managed to resolve those ones, and I believe the Meads is completely, well, it's out for signing now. I don't want to jinx it. So, and in terms of the Lakeview Community Centre, I think Councillor Pollard will know this very well, that we had the initial trust had spent a lot of time and done a lot of effort into it, and they all kind of wanted to step away at the same time. So we had a bit of vulnerability there in terms of what happens next. Fortunately, we do have a new trust that's come forward. So again, working with them to take on the responsibilities to keep that community asset open. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Just to come back on the point about the DBS checks, I think you're absolutely correct in that employers can weigh up whether or not like that volunteer would meet that role. But I think Councillor Harrison's point is really around people being worried about putting themselves forward for a volunteer role because the DBS feels like quite a barrier to doing that, especially if you've got smaller issues from the past. So it would be really helpful, I think, to make people a little bit more aware of the whole process and what it actually means. Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really excited to see talk about a night shelter. I keep seeing a one-liner. Hopefully soon we'll get a full report here so that we know it's going to happen before the winter, not just to have something planned as opposed to having to deal with, it's cold tonight, how many people have we got to accommodate, but also once you've got people in one place, hopefully you can work with them to maybe make their lives better so they're not out on the street. So, yes, very excited, but I want to hear more before the winter hits us. Thank you.
I'll start, and then SJ's been doing all the hard work on this, so I'll probably get her to come in. So we've been doing a lot of exploratory work, which I will let SJ mention. Where we're at the moment, though, is at feasibility stage. So we will absolutely need to bring it forward to committee to consider the investment that needs to go into it, as well as the outcomes and benefits that we feel that we will achieve from that. And I think that is a decision for the committee to take forward, balancing up that, we've only got so much funding and where do we direct it with, just to give you that full picture. So a lot of the exploratory work is being done by SJ and her team. I don't know if you want to make any comment about where you are.
So we spent a lot of time scoping locations, talking to various different church groups, talking to different spaces, looking at different spaces. We have visited nearly all the night shelters around the county and had conversations with them about what their offer looks like, how they are delivering their services, what's safe, what's not safe, how do we staff it, how many volunteers, how do we feed people, all of the vast array of work that needs to go into it. So that has all been sort of going on over the last 2 or 3 months. We have started engagement with our partners just at a local level, really, to see who might come forward to lead on delivery and pick up some of those key areas of work. So we, as Charlotte says, we will be bringing a paper forward with the outcome of all of that work that we've been doing in due course.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Councillor Wise.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I totally agree about this document being a really successful way of showing the cross-cutting themes of work streams, that you can see all the various different committees that have a hand in this, and the fact that we've got this being held by this committee so that we can see it all in one place is what's one of the real strengths of this strategy in the first place. Following on from Councillor Nundy's point about the NEETs part, obviously this is a growing issue nationally once again, sadly, and there's multiple reasons for why that is, and they aren't all the same reasons across the country. So I just think where some of the other committees do have a real hold in this space. So, for example, with the UK SPF stuff, I think, and I can say this as the Vice Chair of the Economy and Property Committee, I think it would be quite helpful. We did have an update about UK SPF allocations and projects previously, but getting some of this sort of information out there so that, you know, you can really see it as that funding comes to a close this year, so that you can see what impacts that's made, is really helpful for the work that this committee does, looking at the outputs that's coming from some of these things and where you might want to try and bring in some of that learning elsewhere, or where maybe it wasn't so successful, or, you know, hopefully what was really successful. And I think it also strengthens the point, again, as Councillor Lundy says, a lot of this always comes back to funding. And the Pride in Place impact funding is great for what it can offer in terms of the projects that we are going to be taking forward in Swale, but it's all capital funding. It's not a replacement for UK SPF, which was supposed to be a replacement for the EU investment funding that we lost. This is the sort of revenue funding we need to support these projects over a long period of time. So I just wonder whether we need to do something with chairs and vice chairs jointly to sort of elevate the need for there to be a multi-year funding allocation that replaces this, because we're still not any the wiser in local government for our communities that used to get that EU funding. And there's also, in that neat space, the connection from a previous conversation about mental well-being. And I think the government are really looking at how that's playing a role in this. And so our willingness to sort of say what we're doing and how we want to try and work with whatever pilots or test and learn projects the government bring forward, if they have a real impact here, then we should be making sure that we're saying we're willing to take part in that, because this document shows that we are joining up the dots on all of this. We're showing the different levers that you need to pull and the different teams that need to work together, and it's happening. And this committee is making sure that's happening. So we're in quite a strong position to make that call. And on the youth democracy engagement, I just wondered whether there was plans for there to be further things like that. As a member of the Policy and Resources Committee, I saw the line in tracking the corporate plan on this, and it was marked as complete because we've done the event, but obviously we know it has to always continue. So that was just my final point on that one, but thank you.
Does anyone want to come in on those?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just come back on the youth democracy. The intention is to run that event yearly. However, we do other work with the schools throughout the year. So we have the police roadshows. There's a lot of other stuff that we're doing. That's not to say there isn't always the opportunity to do more, but we do have a really strong connection now with the secondary schools. So I think we can work on that within the resources that we've got.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Wise, I feel like there was a proposal in there around long-term settlements. Can we make a recommendation to council that is not based on things that are on our agenda this evening? Constitutionally.
3 months into the job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is linked to our agenda.
I'm
Yeah.
happy to defer to Councillor Harrison on that.
That's very sensible. In which case, Councillor Wise, are you happy to propose that we make that a recommendation to full council, that we write to the government and advocate for that?
Yeah, so, and that's to make sure that there's a proper replacement for what was UK Shared Prosperity funding. Yep.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Martin, thank you. UK SPF, sorry, I'm just making it UK SPF. Great, can we all vote on that as a recommendation to council? Oh yes, apologise.
Just one question on that I've not had chance to look at next week's. Is this an item on next week's full council agenda? Because, or will that, if it's not, does that, or if it is, does that then actually hold over till June because the agenda's been published?
It probably is for June, isn't it? Because the agenda's been published. Councillor Palmer?
But there's no reason why this committee, through the chair, couldn't write such a letter.
No, I agree. There isn't. I just think there's power in it coming from full council. I don't think there'd be anybody. Well, I mean, I might preempt a decision on it, but I don't think there'd be anyone politically that wouldn't sit within priority. So I'm just wondering whether it's better. I'm happy to do it from here if we don't want to wait. But if we're happy to wait till June, I personally feel like there is some weight from it coming from full council. Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Palmer?
All I was going to say is you could, even if you did it for yourself, ask all group leaders if they would support it and sign it. And that might give it the weight of the council. But if you're happy to wait for June, it's just with the time that they take to make decisions, it drags on.
Yeah, So I'm comfortable with either it coming from all group leaders or from council. I'm happy to hear opinions on that from the floor. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I'm aware that the next standard full council won't be till June, but actually, given that it's something that, as you rightly say, probably doesn't have any political bent for anybody to go, no, I can't see why it wouldn't be something that couldn't be discussed at the annual council in May, which we would have anyway for mayor making and whatnot. It's a 2-minute vote that says yes or no, isn't it? At the end of the day.
I'm not sure. I think constitutionally we've changed it, so we can't have motions to make. That was the we passed that with the member development working group at last full council, I think. Yeah. Even if we've constitutionally said that we're not going to have any other motions. No, I mean for next week's council. Okay. Well, seeing as the mayor's in the room.
No pressure then, guys.
Madam Mayor, if you're comfortable for this recommendation to come to full council next week, again, I don't think it's controversial. Can we do that?
Chairman, I haven't got a problem with that at all. As long as perhaps a cake or something went my way as a bit of a rider. That's fine. I think it. Much so, I would say, leave it till June because I won't be mayor then. No, I think this is something I can't see anyone disagreeing with it at full council. I think it needs to have the power of the full council going forward. So I wouldn't have a problem with it. But you will have to tell Joe Millard.
I will be the bearer of that news for Joe Millard. So, Councillor Wise, you are proposing that. Councillor Martin, you are seconding. Can we have a vote on that, please? That's unanimous.
At the appropriate time, this earliest time.
Yes.
Next week or June.
It's going to be next week, so it's fine. Great. And we've worked our way around the Constitution. We love it. Councillor Bowen.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of comments. On recognise and welcome the I've got page 13 on my one, the smoke free. I think that's good. Just throwing it out there. Not necessarily for discussion tonight, but blue sky thinking and all that. Smoke isn't the only issue to people's health, and if there was anything we could potentially do as a borough or set things up for future in terms of other emissions, if there's any potential for development there, it might be an interesting area to go to. Just putting it out there. And on Councillor Kavanagh's point about the shelter, if you're doing a piece of work in terms of the report, and I don't think this will be a huge amount to add in, if it's possible, just a ballpark figure, if possible, on actually how much more would it cost in those events of really extreme weather where we're invoking the extreme sweat. Yeah. There are certain days where it doesn't get much warmer in the daytime. And would it cost a lot more where that's bought in to actually offer a day shelter as well? Not for discussion, and if it's really expensive, forget it. But is it, as we're looking at this, is it worth thinking about? Okay, is it potentially viable in the future?
So given that I think we're at just viability discussions generally, then I think that will probably come out in the wash of those discussions in terms of capacity, funding, availability of buildings and all that kind of stuff. So I think, SJ, if you're happy to be part of a viability conversation.
Thank you, Chair. Just to, we are looking at a day service because people who will go into the shelter will need to be assessed and registered and all of that stuff. So we're looking at a holistic offer in the day, but it will be separate from the shelter. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Oh, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. For you, I will be very brief, which all my group will probably laugh at. So on this paper this appendix is fantastic to see what we're doing, but also looking at the preventative work we're doing there as well. The youth democracy event was an absolute hoot. It was great seeing kids getting involved. And you're right, Councillor Nundy, the parties that were dreamt up were offering all sorts of things. So NEAT provision, we know we need to look at that. That's something that is ongoing. The loneliness project, I know, is something that a number of councillors in this council have been very passionate about. So again, that is looking at a problem that we've got out there in the community. Baton of Hope, which I've already said to SJ, was probably one of the highlights of my year, was the Baton of Hope. So I'm glad to see that that's going to be coming forward as well. The shelter, Councillor Kavanagh brought up the fact about the shelter. I know we were looking at it last year, we couldn't get it done. This is something that is just so important. If we can get this done, the difference it's going to make for our rough sleepers. And can I just say, on that point, our rough sleeper team do an absolutely amazing job. I went out and did the count with them last year, and it's just phenomenal what they do. In fact, what the whole of the housing team do. Another cake. And then moving forward, obviously White Ribbon, we know that's going to be coming. That's an every year thing, which I know myself and Councillor Nundy and Councillor Martin are quite vocal about. This is good stuff. This is stuff that we must and are very proud of. But it isn't just the stuff that's happening for the here and now. It's the stuff that's going to prevent what's going on. It's very much a holistic document, which is fantastic. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Watson. If there's no other ones, can I propose that we note the report, please? Noted. Fabulous. Okay. So agenda item 9 is the Good Causes Community Lottery. So this report looks at how the lottery has been performing, and there is a recommendation about potentially delaying distributing of central funds for another year. It's SJ, is this year? I'll pass over to you then, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. The report sets out the current position for the Swale Community Lottery. It has been, well, next week it will have been running for 1 year. And as part of the lottery, there is an option for residents to choose the central fund pot. So they can choose one of their selected good causes. So that's any of the 50 odd causes that are registered, or they can choose our central fund pot when they buy a ticket. And so over the last year, that pot has been sort of slowly mounting up. but the report details that it isn't a large pot of money at the moment. It's about £2,000. So we are proposing that we leave that pot to build up for one further year to allow that to be a slightly bigger, well, it should at least be double and hopefully more, because we're looking at the promotion and increase of sales. But that would obviously give us a bit more time to have a nice fund of money that we can either split equally by the good causes, or we can look to run a grant scheme, or there are options that we can look at nearer the time. But yeah, so that's the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Councillor Palmer.
Sorry, Chair. I was just surprised to see that it would cost so much to make each payment, which seems disproportionate to me. But I'm happy with the report and delaying it for a year. I can see that, but it's the costs that seem disproportionate to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. In consultation with the finance team, it's not just my team's resources, it's finances, it's the administration. So that is kind of the collective cost of all of our resources to make 50 odd payments, each one. That's the resource cost for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Chair. It won't come as any surprise. I've never been a huge advocate for this. As much nothing wrong with the report, it doesn't make that my feeling towards it actually particularly change. And that's no criticism of any member of staff. When this first came about, it was heralded as we're going to be able to give lots of money to local causes, and it was kept centrally, blah, 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 blah. And a year in, it's made £2,000 and costing £1,400 to actually do it, at least. That's not particularly inspiring, in my view. I would be interested... What do we mean by holding a celebratory event? Is that an in-person? How much is that going to cost? Because again, if you're going to hold an event to celebrate something that's raised £200, it's going to cost £800, hypothetically, to actually run it. Again, that's thinking, really? It's just, for me, it's not hitting the mark, I'm afraid. But I note the reports, and it's not good. Yes, we can't do anything with £2,000 to try and put that out now. It's not going to. It's a drop in the ocean. We wait another year. Is £4,000 still going to make that much of a difference for the amount of time and effort that we put into this? That's for a discussion another day, I think.
Do you want to just come in on that? Sorry, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bowen. I think in some of the individual good causes have done relatively well in this for a new lottery. It isn't doing it is doing better than we kind of envisaged. There is a lot of work for those good causes to do themselves to promote their own lottery. So the purpose of the event, which is costing about 50 quid, is basically some cake and some tea, and then actually promote to them how they can improve their ticket sales. So it's kind of a double-handed event. It's not costing us a lot of money to do that, and hopefully we can enlighten them on how they can increase their ticket sales and raise more funds. Thank you.
Councillor Pollard.
Thank you, Chair, but Councillor Palmer pipped me to the post.
You're on my list. I'm coming back to Councillor Palmer. I'm going round and then coming back to say you're next. You're up.
No, Councillor Palmer asked my question. He pipped me at the post.
Oh, I see.
Got there
Fine.
first.
Yeah, no problem. Councillor Harrison, then.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of questions. First of all,
to be fair, I feel mentally like we're already on Friday, so it's been a long week so far. So I have not had the time to go online with a migraine and research what we have agreed in the past. But SJ can tell me, what did we agree when this was being set up relating to the central pot? The second question, because I thought we had an idea of what we were going to use it for. The second one is on the financial resources. The community lottery is self-funding through the revenue of ticket sales. It isn't self-funding if it's then costing this council £1,425 so far to issue 57 payments. Plus, I'm pretty sure that SJ is not a volunteer for 80 hours a week. I'm sure we pay you. Probably not enough. But there is an officer cost to this, and that is a cost. It's not free. And I mean, wait, to be fair, you know my views. I didn't agree with it in the first place, but I don't do the lottery. Don't agree with the gambling. That's my personal view. But I know people do. But we've got it. But a lot of things were said, like the self-funding, and it isn't self-funding to me if there's, you know, you actually put down that there's a cost there. And the reason, and I'll come back when I get the answer for the central pot.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harrison. The agreement, there wasn't an agreement about how the central fund would be allocated because when it was set up, we didn't know how it would do. So that's sort of why we're here today. The payments, the reason those payments are only if we choose to go down that road of paying individual organisations, every 50 odd organisation, a fair split of what is in the pot now. So that's kind of to give you an example of what that would look like in cost terms. And there is an officer resource, but that was agreed when we took on this project that there would be minimal officer resource for delivering it. But it was all in the setup. Now it's minimal sort of day to day.
So we haven't then given any of the good causes any money so far.
Not from they've won.
No, regardless of what pot it came out.
They would have got money from their own lottery pots, but this central fund of money we haven't divvied out to anyone yet. It's still sat there waiting to decide how we split that up.
So who gave the good causes their share so far? Who wrote them a cheque or did this on?
So that comes directly from Gatherwell. So
that's the operator.
Yes.
Right. So what I'm trying to get at is there was over a 10 grand setup cost. Okay. I lost the vote there. It happened. Thereafter, it was supposed to be self-funding at no cost to this council. And my concern is that, you see, my view was, well, that central pot should cover any costs to this council of doing any of it. And I say that I don't support gambling. I'm not going to say 50% of our residents don't support gambling, ergo you can't be spending their money on it. But there are a goodly proportion of our residents who do not support gambling and who don't actually do this or any other lottery. And so when you're talking about the central fund being split between good causes, my point is that if there has been any cost to this council over and above the plus 10 grand that we already coughed up to set it up, then that central pot should cover our costs and not go off to more good causes, because that's not what the point was. I mean, to be fair, I vaguely recall a discussion to say, well, you know, we can take our costs out of it because it's ours to do with what we want. I don't recall at the time that there was a, oh, it's our pot to do with what we want. But what we could do is divvy up our pot to all these good causes as well. What's the point of having our pot if that's the case? Thanks, Chair.
Thanks to Councillor Harrison. Couple of points just to come back on. We don't have to use that pot to give it to those good causes. We could run a grant scheme and advertise it for something specific, health and well-being, cost of living. We could put it out to the wider community. So it doesn't have to, that's what we would have that conversation about. If you choose to leave it to build up a bit, and in relation to us not giving that money out, we would have to check if we could do that, because I think it's part of the agreement that we issue that funding out, but would need to take that away and check that, Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, that was what I was trying to get at. What was agreed at the time? Because if there was an agreement at the time, it should be in this paper that we don't actually have a choice. And if we don't have a choice, then that should be in there. Thanks, Chair.
Just so Faversham has its own lottery that is has the same operator, and there is decisions to be made about that central pot. Like we have discussed previously about whether we look to put that central pot towards some of that central pot towards like advertising it to be able to kind of get more groups to join in. So I think there probably is a discussion to be had about what that pot could be used for. But we can come onto that in a minute. Right, I've got Councillor Martin, then Councillor Braun, then Councillor Wise.
Thank you, Chair. To put a slightly different spin on it, obviously the report only gives us what's in the central pot. It doesn't tell us how much has been raised for each of the individual charities or combined. That would probably make a different spin and a more positive spin in the room, I think, if we were able to say that so far it's raised £25,000 for all the other good causes combined, would probably alleviate some of the fears that I think are in the room. Certainly, I agree with the recommendation of leaving the central pot to discuss further down the road when there's a little bit more in it. Other methods that have been used that would cost less than equal division, you can put all 57 names in a hat and take 3 of them out, and that's a £75 cost because you're only making 3 transactions. One wins big amount of money out of it, 2 other charities get smaller amounts. There's many ways of doing it to make it work, but it has to be remembered that 2,000 raised so far is only the central pot, and there are 57 other pots that have got a lot more in them that's already gone to those good causes. So it's doing the job that it was proposed to do, regardless of whether we supported it or not. It's working. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Chair. I was actually going to ask the same thing on, obviously we've previously had a report of the smaller pots. Perhaps if it's not too much of a time constraint for you, SJ, if like when we do have updates on this, to have those included.
Councillor Wise.
Thank you very much, Chair. Actually, on that point, I presumably when you're marking the 1 year celebration, there's a nice opportunity there for that information to come together. So I'm sure that'll be forthcoming at that stage. On that point, when you go onto the website, and the website's a very similar template to all the councils that have taken these up, it says our cause is on track to raise X amount this year. What year are we talking about? Because obviously it's set up by the council within one. So just a bit of clarification about that. Is that January to December 2026, provided those tickets stay on there, or is that from last April to this April? Or I'm just curious to know on that one, because that feeds back to Councillor Martin's point about the picture that you get around what's this central pot looking like. I think as well, my understanding of it when this came to policy and resources is that you can sign up to play or to buy a ticket for the Swale Community Lottery, and that's where this pot helps to build up. You're not buying your tickets through a specific cause, so therefore you are still doing that with the intention that the money goes to a good cause. That's where I think the issue might be, to say then actually no, we don't want to allocate it as grants or whatever. I do think it needs to be along the lines of a smaller group of people, however that's done, and obviously this committee reviewing that in a year's time is a sensible proposition in my view. But obviously that needs to be totally clarified following the points that Councillor Harrison made, just so that then when you do come to look at it, you know exactly what that is within your remit to suggest as a committee. But my final one, which I'm not trying to be negative about this in any way, is whether any future evaluation of its success could list the number, so that we keep it consistent in how it's being looked at, the number of groups where they have signed up and sold no tickets at all, and how many have reached their goal, because I'm not sure there are any that have reached their goal so far, which goes to the point that is made here, that actually groups do need a little bit of support from time to time to boost their efforts and learn from what one group might have done that another might be able to replicate. You know, if some have reached or come close to reaching their ticket sale goal. But also, I think the number that have sold no tickets is a bit that we need to look at in this a little bit, because otherwise we could just end up with a lottery of loads of good causes on it who aren't generating any income for themselves, which is a bit of a shame if that's then the case, that they are putting themselves out there and getting very little out of it. So I think they're the bits that I think need to be looked at alongside then any decision that might come at whatever date about what happens with that central pot. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Wise. I've got Councillor Palmer and then Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Chair. But I think most points was raised, and I like what Councillor Martin suggested, is some sort of, you know, if it's costing so much to administer, there must be a better way to do it, to the central fund. But the point is, it's the central fund. There are others which members might want to be aware of. And I believe my recollection said that it was a 2-year thing where it would be looked at and reappraised to see if it was achieving the aims and goals that it had. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Palmer. Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Chair. I remember the original report and the fact that SJ had said it was slow starting, which was not unusual. So yes, I remember some people had nothing. Maybe that would have changed. Yes, it would definitely be helpful to have an update. But my biggest concern is about the cost to the council. I remember it was advertised as this amazing thing that once it was set up, there would be no cost to the council. Now, with the central pot, if it's going to cost £25 per transaction, I don't see how we can do a grant system, because that, I presume, will cost 25 quid a time. Maybe we just need to choose one good cause. So I assume that would be one £25 charge, and take that out of the central pot. We are not affluent enough as a council to be able to be handing out money like this when it's meant to be self-funded. Thank you.
So the central pot can't be used by the council to do other things with. It's kind of a separate, and it's a separate entity of money which we're supposed to be, you know, doing additional bits and bobs with. It can't become part of like core funding. It's not.
I get that, but the admin cost to be handing it out to a good cause, should we be, the council, be footing that bill as well?
Sorry, just to add, Chair, the actual running costs are being covered. So the cost of the licence fee, the cost of the gambling commission, those are all being covered by the income that is being made by the ticket sales. So from that perspective, it is washing its face. It's, we just have to put a little bit of resource in to promote ticket sales and that communications element.
It's been a flurry of hands. So I've got Councillor Palmer, Councillor Martin, Councillor Bowen, Councillor Broad. Oh yeah, Councillor Martin.
I have now found the figure that I was looking for. It was buried. So far, £22,214 has been raised for good causes. That has gone direct. So it's only the 2,000 that we've got. And just to throw the other one in the mix when we're considering those options further down the road, we could equally say that the central fund is actually the Mayor's Charity Fund. And then again, it's one single payment. There you go.
Right, that is very pragmatic. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that other one, and that makes sense. Another one, if the mayor has two charities, doesn't make it's a good it's still a better, I think, better option. But if it's more than one, in terms of the actual paper, we got the two recommendations. I think they can be agreed. What I would like to ask, given the conversation, is for at the earliest opportunity, if we can, is for a fuller update on the whole issue of the Swell Lottery, and to include the volume of tickets sold, because I'm guessing, unlike a lot of lotteries, you see a decline after a short while. It starts with a big bang and it starts going down. Can we have an update report on that at some point before the end of this year? Certainly, I would like to see that, and that would include all of the pots. And how much each charity is getting, because my village hall is one of the pots. I would hazard a guess that it hasn't made much. I mean, hypothetically, if each member of the council took £50 out of their members' grant, that's more raised straight away there than you've made in a year onto the central fund. So I think we do need, I would suggest or would propose that we have a fuller update report on that. Or whether it's here or P&R, I can't remember which committee. I think it's here. Thank you.
I think there's a couple of things. I think we can probably just download the summary and probably circulate that through of just a regular member update, so you've got the information rather than necessarily bring a report if you just want to see sight of the data, how much is going out, which I've heard a few times today. So we can get that information out fairly easily because we can download the good causes summary and circulate that in one of your regular weekly updates if that would be sufficient as an initial information. One of the things is we do have to enter into an annual agreement with Gatherwell as the provider. So I think it is, and there is some gambling commission elements that we have to do to make sure we're compliant. So it is a sort of a year by year basis. Can't remember who said it now, but I think the initial term was to sign up for the 2 years and do that evaluation. So I think what we can do is note to bring it back possibly this time next year with that, or maybe ahead of time, to make sure if we did want to discontinue it after that 2 year note, that there's a full update and an allocation process, and whether some members want to be involved in creating those options for that process offline, so to speak, so we can make sure that that's shaped into a committee decision, then we can look at that. So as some proposals. Thank you.
Thanks. If I might come back, please. I don't want to generate more work, but I'm not sensing. For me, that doesn't go quite far enough. With all the respects there, personally, I would rather see an interim report come into us for discussion. The other point on that, if we keep to the 2 years, which is fine, if we review this time next year, we are likely to be in the pre-election period, whichever election it's going to be. We can't. I would think we're on a bit dodgy ground at that point, saying we're going to carry on the lottery, we're going to get rid of the lottery, we're going to allocate this fund from this council. I don't think we can wait that long. We need to have that probably by Christmas. And if for the 2-year mark, if it's not going to then continue, we can't leave it the 2 years and then say, "Oh, we're now going to stop it." I think it needs to be a bit sooner than that. Sorry.
I mean, I think one thing is consideration. It's not necessarily a budgetary constraint because we say it does cover its own costs, but we could tie it in with the budget cycle. So sort of, the autumn time to bring back the review. We would still continue running it for the full year, but a decision would be made earlier whether we would renew at that time. So I think we could still do that, take it away from the pre-election period, and also give us enough notice to, either know that we're carrying on and what other work we need to do to promote, or decommission it if we needed to do that. So I think we can schedule it in on the floor plan.
I think so, probably, because it alters the forward plan. So if you wanted to make a proposal,
Can I make the proposal then for the autumn, whatever quarter that works in, second or third quarter for this year, but the autumn before Christmas.
Okay. Second, Councillor Palmer. Can we have a vote on that then, please? Sorry, SJ. I do think it is. I do think there's some valid points, because we are going to have to move into potentially making that decision fairly early. So, Councillor Braun, I've got you next.
Thank you for allowing me to come back, Chair. I mean, I just wanted to say that we are a lean council, so splitting it 57 ways at £25 a time does not make financial sense for us, and it doesn't really make financial sense for the charities, because they're going to have to spend more on admin to spend the measly amount we give them than it's worth to them. I mean, Councillor Martin's suggestion, that could be something. I mean, I'd prefer if committee members all nominate a charity individually and then we draw lots from that, and then you've got one singular rather than the two mayor's charities, just to, cut the costs down a bit further. But I splitting it all ways, especially if it continues growing and you get more groups in there and the costs for this council will just go up and up on that, it's not going to make sense there.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Vaughan. So obviously one of the recommendations is for the committee to are asked to agree how members will work with the community and partnership team to review and agree the allocation of central fund when nearing the end of the second year of delivery, if recommendation 1 passes. I don't know whether we can make a proposal that goes into the mayor's charity now, or are we do we have to go through that process of making that decision? It just seems like there's a lot of support for that as an idea in the room. Do you want to make that as a proposal? Is there a seconder for that?
I'll make it as a proposal, and just to clarify, the mayor's charities has its own separate bank account, so you would only make one transaction. The mayor's charity pot through the mayor's office would then do the normal bit where it issues the 2 checks or 3 checks or 1 check or however many checks the mayor at that time has. So it is still only one transaction for us.
Councillor Palmer?
Just on that, which I think is a fine idea, what about if the mayor's charities fund aren't part of the lottery scheme? Does it have to go to someone in the lottery, or it can go to them? Fine, I'll go for that.
Okay. I think we probably, sorry, is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Kavanagh. So I think probably what we'll have to do, is everyone done on speaking on it? Councillor Bowen, you've got more.
So just looking at the 2 recommendations. So recommendation 1 is to agree to delay the distribution of the lottery central fund for a year. But now it seems like also on recommendation 2, we're now agreeing to actually.
Well, no, that's what I was just about to say. So I think we're going to have to take them separately, because they interact with each other.
Yeah. So if we agree 1, we can't do 2.
Well, no, we can. If we agree one to delay it for a year, then it can still go into the mayor's charity next year
Next
at the
year.
end of
Okay.
year 2, which would be it. Just like that recommendation would be instead of recommendation 2 as it stands, I would imagine. Yeah. Do you want to? Let's take the amendment to recommendation 2 first, shall we?
Or we could defer it as part of the follow-up paper towards the end of the year.
Well, we've got a proposal on the floor, haven't we? That's been proposed and seconded. So, shall we vote on that? Oh, council. Does anyone have any? Well, wait a minute. Everyone's confusing me just at the minute. So stop, and we'll go back. So, Councillor Wise first, then Councillor Gould, then Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, sorry, just a comment on the proposal. I think it's a very sensible proposal, and it's one that I was thinking through as well as an easy way to sort of resolve this. But my concern is that this paper came here with a proposal about delaying it because we want to see how much the pot might grow. And what may end up being a decision now, because you're looking at the figure there is now, suddenly everyone in Swale might go out and buy 10 tickets for the central pot. And then suddenly you're like, oh, well, we didn't want all of that to go. That's my only concern. I think it should be, there should be something that goes forward saying that the committee feels that this ought to be a sensible way for this to be looked at, but that I think there still needs to be some element of reviewing the ticket sales, perhaps in line with the timescales that Councillor Bowen's suggested interim report comes in, so that it's not totally delayed the whole year. It could be sorted so that there is an allocation this year for the mayor's charity, then the following year for the mayor's charity, which then takes care of it. If that's then bearing out the projection for the central fund, if there's a sudden uptick in that, and then following the interim report that Councillor Bowen's asked for, members may think, actually, maybe it should go to a few more groups, or there should be some sort of grant scheme. You could be I'm just saying, you could be looking at 15 grand by then, which isn't totally out of the realms of possibilities, but probably unlikely to be. And people may think, actually, we're happy to spend £100 if it goes to 4 groups. Just my comment. Thanks.
I think it's a sensible point. Right, I have a whole bunch of people now. So I have Councillor Braun. Did you already go? Okay, Councillor Gould, then Councillor Palmer.
So I was just wanting to clarify what we were voting on at this point.
Right, we're not voting on anything at the moment. So there is a proposal on the floor at the minute that the central pot is allocated to the mayor's charity. I think Councillor Wise raises a valid point, but we will vote on it because there is a proposal and a seconder on the floor. Councillor Palmer.
I had the very same question.
Okay. Well, is everyone comfortable with... Councillor Watson, I'm so sorry. I've skipped over you, and we've got Councillor Harrison as well.
Thank you, Chairman. As Mayor, thank you very much. The only query I had is where do we stand legally with our licence? Was there anything in there that said we couldn't give it to the Mayor's charity? Is it that we have to give it to our group of good cause? I just wanted to check. Just don't want us getting into trouble, because I'm not sure if that was a term on the licence. So I just wanted to check legally that we are able to do that. Thank you, Chairman.
Even though it's called the Mayor's Charity, it will be an individual charity that is a charity in its own right, so there won't be any issues with that.
Councillor Harrison.
My personal view is that the money should go back into the reserves, but then I've been spending too much time with Lisa. I do not agree that if suddenly there's shed loads in the Swale pot, we should think again. If there's shed loads in the council pot, then good luck to the Mayor's charity, whichever the Mayor's charity happens to be. If there's if there's, you know, not much more than there is already. I mean, I agree we wait the 2 years, although that means that no, let's not wait the 2 years, because cancer research is something which an awful lot of us I personally support through my own money, and I have been in this chamber for that many years. I could give you at least a dozen names of councillors who have died of it, cross party, cross borough, and I can't think of a more worthwhile mayor of Swales charity than cancer research. I know it's not the only one, Karen, but so yeah, if there's shed loads of money there, well done. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Harrison. Have I missed anyone? Okay. I'm just trying to do some constitutional maths on the recommendations. So I think recommendation probably still stands, and then the amendment is for recommendation 2 with your agreement, Councillor Martin.
To make life easy, I'd suggest if you take the amendment first, and then you may find that recommendation 1 is not required. That's just a thought.
What can you explain why it wouldn't be required? Because we're still going to have to make a decision about whether or not we delay it.
Just in terms of if we've, as in we might not have to support it, because if we've supported the amendment, we've made a decision. We don't then need to delay.
Righto. Okay. So okay. Well, the amendment is that the central pot will be allocated to the mayor's charities. That has been approved. That has been proposed and seconded. Thank you. My brain's running out.
Chair,
Yeah.
am I allowed to vote on it?
Yeah, of course you are.
Right, sorry. Thank you.
You're not going to benefit. You're not going to benefit for yourself. So can we have a vote on that, please? All in favour? Okay. Any against? And any abstentions? Okay, so that is passed. And then can we take recommendation 1? So the committee is asked to agree the proposal of delay of distribution of the Swale Community Lottery Central Fund for 1 year to allow funds to accumulate. Do I have a proposer for that recommendation? I don't understand. Right, so I don't understand why you wouldn't need to. Well, yeah, I know that, but I don't understand why we wouldn't need to still do that, because we've voted for it to go into the mayor's charity. We haven't voted on a pause or not, have we? That's my understanding. Hang on. Councillor Harrison.
I think the bulk of the report is about, well, there's only £2,000 is an awful lot of money to some people. There's £2,000 in the central pot. Shall we leave it until the end of the second year, when hopefully there'll be a bit more, and then you can decide what you want to do with it? Well, actually, we've just decided what we want to do with it. We want to give it to the mayor's charity. So we don't need to wait till the end of the second year. With the first year's money goes to the mayor's charity, and then charity fund, whatever it's called, to be distributed amongst the mayor's charities, and then the end of the second year's central pot will go to the mayor's charities. So
yes,
so that's irrelevant.
Thank you for that clarification. I guess that there is a minimal difference in that there would be one financial spend on the processing of it in year 1 and 1 in year 2. So that would be the difference between the two. I have Councillor Wise.
No, I think that pretty much covers it. I think that there is still a choice there, like you say. That's all I was going to say. There is still a choice for members. You could say that, yes, we've amended recommendation 2, but that you would still like it to be delayed so that it's a larger sum that then goes at that point, or you just don't take that recommendation and it's in year. So it's this year and then the following year is that when that applies to. And therefore, going back to my previous comments, that's what I would support. I would support us not progressing recommendation 1. If recommendation 1 goes through, then yeah, I probably wouldn't have supported recommendation 2. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Bowen.
I just want Councillor Wise. I think it's just summed it up very, very wisely. No pun intended. How long have I been in chamber? I've only just come up with that one. Sorry. You're right. We've just agreed that, but part of the last recommendation wasn't when we, as you say, when we're going to actually allocate it. So my reading of the discussion was that we would want to allocate that money to the Mayor's charity this year. So therefore, because the recommendation is in the paper, I'm wondering if the easiest way to actually deal with it is to keep the recommendation on there and not wanting to lead members on how they want to vote. But if we were to vote it down, the recommendation is then not agreed. So therefore, the proposal of holding it for delaying it for a year, therefore falls by decision of this committee, which then means that if we want to, we can allocate the funds to the Mayor's charity this year, and then whatever we raise in the next year to whatever Mayor's charity next year.
So I mean, that's fine. That's fine. So my view is, constitutionally, that we have amended recommendation 2. We haven't voted for recommendation 2, so we could still change. We could still, take them both together, or we could just vote down recommendation 1 and say we're not going to do it. We're not going to delay it, and it goes into the Mayor's charity as recommendation 2. I think either way, it is the same. So, I will propose recommendation 1 from the chair. You will second. Any support? Is there who is in favour of recommendation 1? Okay, so we won't be delaying. We won't be delaying paying to the Mayor's charity for. No, we won't be delaying distribution of the central pot for a year. And recommendation 2 as amended. Can we vote on recommendation 2 as amended? What do you mean? Okay. Are those against? No. So, Councillor Kavanagh, we're voting on whether or not you are against recommendation 1. So, yes, the majority are against recommendation 1. Right. This is our first one of these in this committee, so I feel pleased that it's the first one. And then the second recommendation, so that recommendation has fallen. Second recommendation is that the money will be distributed to the Mayor's charity. All those in favour of recommendation 2, all those against, and all those abstentions. Had 2 abstentions. Thank you. So that. Are we clear that that's happened? That's happened. Good. Okay. So that just took some faffing about, didn't it? Okay. So it's 8:30, members. I'm going to suggest that we have a 10-minute comfort break. Can we be back at 22, please? Thank you. lot of talking for a meeting that's begun. That was my teacher voice. So item number 10 is the housing enforcement policy. So this is obviously quite a substantial item, and it's really about updating our enforcement approach in the private rental sector. I know, like, that was awful. Like the private rental sector, particularly in light of the Renters' Rights Act of 2025. On that wonderful introduction, Sam, I'm going to hand over to you, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening to all these councillors. The report actually seeks to obtain permissions for you to adopt the revised policy. So we got the two policy in place in the past: the private sector housing enforcement policy and civil penalty policy. Because of the new legislation that's actually coming in on the 1st of May, the existing policy become useless. There are a lot of new powers and sanctions brought to the council. Is actually expanded duty to the council. We got Housing Act 2004, which we are put in place, but that legislation actually is expanded a duty to the council to take action. So that's the reasons we were looking and reviewing our policies, and that needs to be revised. And also government was actually very supportive of that policy review and also change it as well. That's the reason they have supported the group called GISOR, which is an organization who are actually trying to provide training, informations, and as well as that, the policy as well. This policy is written by around a dozens of housing professional, and that is actually also approved by the MSCLG. So around half of local authorities across England confirmed that they will be adopting the policy. And that's around, I think, 165 so far, and county have confirmed. And I had a meeting with the colleagues across the county council as well. All but one have confirmed that they will be adopting the policy. So what's happened is that a little bit of a context about existing and the new policy. So new policy is the more robust in terms of the sanction, in terms of the protection to the tenants, and also it's very much transparent as well. So it's very much about the deterrence of these some of the breaches and the offences with the associated financial penalties up to 40Ks. So, and also it's consistent across the country. So that's the reasons we are proposing to get permission from you to approve that policy. And I'm happy to answer any question.
Thank you. So I have Councillor Palmer, then Councillor Harrison, then Councillor Braun, then Councillor Pollard.
It's probably not really a question, but I think the policy is fine. I'd be quite happy to propose them. My only concern is the fundings for 2 years, which is highlighted in the report, and going forward from that, hopefully, and it probably goes on to what Councillor Wise raised earlier, is, where will the funding come from? But that might be an answer or a question for another day. But generally, the report's very good, and the policy itself. Thank you.
Yeah, just coming in the funding, and obviously as Sans detailed in the report that we have had new burdens funding. I think it is important to remember though that these are statutory responsibilities of the council, so we will need to look at and they are new statutory responsibilities, hence the new burdens funding. So we will need to take a view around sort of the resourcing levels and how we sustain that. If there is a lot of non-compliance, which obviously we don't want, we will have some fines, and that has to be recycled into that funding, and we could utilise that, and it is ring-fenced for that reason. But we do need to have that base service to make sure that we are compliant. And I think as the there's quite a lot of secondary legislation to come out as part of the Renters' Rights Act. As we get into that, we will know what our compliance looks like, and we will have to do those, self-assessment. We audit have already planned to come in the future to look at our compliance on that. So we will have to feed that into a lot of the corporate processes to understand where we are with that. But I do think it is a risk. The funding, the new burdens funding was lower than we were anticipating, I think is fair to say. So it is definitely something I would recommend that this committee keeps an eye on as well. And we can obviously bring updates once the Renters' Rights Act has come in and what that looks like and how we report on that going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Palmer. I think it's an important thing for us to be across, isn't it? Understanding how that looks with the secondary legislation. Councillor Harrison, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Charlotte's just answered at least half my questions. The two apprentices, are they the two temporary posts that we agreed to see how it worked out in terms of this specifically says not income generation, so the opposite of that. I have watched this service over many, many years, and the only thing I'm still waiting for is the licensing scheme. Just drop that in as I used to. But I have seen over the last few years there has been a more galvanised approach, I think, because the education isn't working. People have taken the mick, and the work of San and the team, I think, has been really, really good in terms of, no, we do the nicey approach because, there's no need for hobnail boots most of the time. But if you come the old acid, we will put the hobnail boots on. And I think that approach has worked, and I commend San and the team for that. So what I'm looking at is, whilst I'd be quite happy to have half a person in private sector housing, because all the landlords are doing exactly what they should do and more besides, I can't see that happening. So in the meantime, what I'm trying to get at without saying let's make a lot of dosh, is we should be using our powers to self-fund the service as best we can. That's good, isn't it? Self-fund the service. There were a few other bits that they've given us over the years where they've said, well, no, we've told you can charge this, that and the other so that you self-fund the service. I think planning was one, but they need to up the ante. So, as I say, I'd like to think that landlords will get the message, but I don't think they all will. And whilst the number of Rackmans across the borough has gone down slightly since I became a councillor, they're not eradicated. And so, yeah, I think more power to your elbow, but I think that we should be looking at how can we self-fund this. And I would hope for, we don't often get this we haven't had this to committee all that regularly over many years. Indeed, to cabinet when it was one of the services that gets on with the job and But I think that this, especially these days, people are paying through the nose for rent, and they are entitled to a decent home. And if the landlords are swinging the lead, then I want to know that we've got the people to get in there and sort them out. And after the first strike, you're in court, mate. So that's where I'm coming from. So I'm a really good policy, really good report, San, and convey my grateful thanks to you and the team for this. I know we're supposed to scrutinise a lot of stuff, and I'll come on to that a bit later, but when you're giving us the information that we need, it's very hard to probe and say, yeah, but what about this, what about that, and what about the other? Because you've either written it or Charlotte's just answered it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Braun.
Well, I was mostly going to say what Councillor Harrison said, but I was going to say that San if he thinks this is the right policy, I'm more than happy to go with that. And I was going to say the exact words of he will have that service self-funded in no time because he's done a great job so far, and giving him more powers to pursue dodgy individuals who are renting to people, he will be able to get them.
Councillor Pollard.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two questions. Sorry. The prohibition of use for all of a dwelling for emergency remedial action. What happens to the tenants, and will this stop reporting?
In terms of the prohibition order, if we actually serve a notice where there is a imminent risk of the health and the safety to the occupant, so we are actually obliged to serve the notice, and the tenants actually becomes homeless. So what's happened is we got to require tenants to the housing option to provide sort of a temporary accommodation in the meantime, so that we can't actually allow someone to be homeless because of our action. So when it comes to that sort of decisions, that's actually come down to me, not the ordinary or sort of low-level sort of officer. So we got to make sure that it's balanced in place. Sometimes it's not, in my experience, it's not always necessary, but there are actually different legislations and tools we can use to try to eliminate imminent risk, not going down to that far. So that's actually is how we do that. And your second question is?
Thank you. I just wanted to sort of like there's the balance between the cost and residents coming forward thinking that they might be made homeless. So that was that question. The other one was, how would you determine a prejudice against children? So these laws have come in and it's saying that you can't prejudice against children. If somebody complains about that, how would you determine that?
The assessments of the housing conditions are particularly around sort of vulnerable people that we have to look at when you make assessment in the housing. So the children, for example, under 5 or sometimes under 14 years old, if they are in place, we got to actually prioritize them. We deal with that issues quite actually quickly, and so that they will not be exposed to some of the hazards like a damp and mold, so we can address the issues quite quickly. And also, talking about children, we also actually look at the some vulnerable group, which is older elderly people as well. So the legislations actually protect the most vulnerable people, including that children, and we've got to make sure that we apply the legislations too. They make sure that they are on the priority to protect them.
I understand that it's in place to protect, but let's say single mother of 2 trying to get a property on the private sector, and they are not getting any offers, and they suspect it's because they've got children. What would be the process?
I think this is a different roof in terms of we are very much around sort of the housing enforcement. That means to try to improve the conditions within their actually occupations. Sometimes, like you said, we got some sort of cases where they want to actually move out or get the maybe council housing, and they propose to us. What we do is we actually address some of the issue within the property, why they are actually being looked at by different teams like housing locations for their abandonment as well. So we try to communicate internally with them, try to share information about that family, and also trying to manage expectation from the family with the children as well. That's actually what we can do, how we can communicate with them internally and also with the family.
Sorry, I feel like I'm missing something. Page 94 at the bottom.
Yeah.
It says discriminating against prospective tenants during the letting process.
Oh, that's what you're
on grounds
talking
of those
Sorry.
tenants in receipt of benefits or have children under Section 33.
Okay. I mean, I just got confused. This is a new legislation that is actually bringing it to. Let's say currently the rentings actually are very much discriminatory against the people with the benefits, for example, and children. So on the 1st of May, they can't do that. So that's actually legislation coming into in place on the 1st of May. That's the reason we need to put that policy in place to protect against those actually people with the children's or the benefits.
Sorry, taking up a huge amount of time. I absolutely understand that.
Okay.
But how are you actually how are you determining that this has actually happened? Because it's okay saying it in a nice big rule book, but how are we actually going to act on that? How are we going to understand that that's actually happening?
So what we got to be doing is we got to actually look at the different sources of information. Let's say from housing option teams, they will get that sort of information from the tenants, approaching them. They will pass the information to us. So that means we got to look at how the agents and landlords are advertising their actually property online. We're trying to gather evidence on there. And then once we have that evidence, we got to actually give them interview and a caution, for example, trying to build the evidence. And that allows us to either we can actually take the enforcement action like breaches or the offenses. And that's how we actually approach and sort of enforce them. So, for example, that discriminatory advertisement is up to £7,000 for a breach. So if we got evidence in place, through the power we got given, so if we got actually power to get into the property, the letting agent's office, we can actually take and seize the documents, and we can present it to the court. And so that's sort of power we are given, and so that we can actually enforce, and so that it's a serving deterrence. And that's how we enforce them.
So does that actually mean, I'm so sorry, does that actually mean that we need to encourage residents to come through the council rather than look for private renting if they're struggling because they've been declined, possibly because they've got children?
Well, I think, and there's a lot of education that needs to be done with the Renters' Rights Act, and I think there's some national campaigns, and obviously we need to look at how we localise those and educate people. We get a lot of, typically through housing options rather than the SANS team, people will approach to say, oh, you know, I'm having difficulties. So we get a lot of people, and that's when we need to give that sort of tenancy advice. People need to understand that is discriminatory now. We do have powers which we didn't have before, and it is about unpicking a lot of that new legislation, and that will take time. But once somebody hears about it, it normally spreads. So some of that could be education, is that you can't discriminate. Sometimes our landlord team within housing options will work to move people out of temporary accommodation, or people at risk of being homeless will work with the private rented sector to place people. Again, if they're saying we won't take somebody with children, straight away we know we can educate them, we can work with them to do that. So I think there's so many, like Sans already mentioned, compared to the previous legislation, this is a huge raft of new powers, and it's about using the right powers to try and tackle the problem. But we know certain property landlords won't take people with children at the moment, and that is a problem. I'm not saying putting something in a policy is going to resolve that overnight. That is going to take time. That is probably going to take some enforcement action, if not by us, by another council that gets publicised. But it's also about us challenging landlords when we get that information in as well.
Thank you.
I think as well, just around like the educational piece, there's probably work to be done, not in asking people to come to the council to look for housing unless they are, needed to be on the list, but like encouraging people to report if they're being told that you're not going to have children in the house. Because I agree, like it's a massive problem. When I was trying to look for houses with my two, the amount of 3-bedroom houses that said no children was pretty disgusting across the borough, because where are you supposed to live? So yeah, I think our job really as councillors is to facilitate that reporting if that starts happening after the legislation's passed. But yeah, I think it's a really important point, so thank you for raising it. Councillor Nundy and then Councillor Kavanagh, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Sam. This is a really good report. I think it strongly supports the main principles of the Renters' Right Act, which is fantastic. There will be some teething problems, but I'm sure that yourself and the rest of the team will be able to work through them. What I would like to know is how much publicity are we going to give it when we absolutely hammer someone? Because we've done some quite good comms works in the past around, nuisance vans just being parked on streets, in car parks, fly tippers, other people that just make the area look untidy. Unscrupulous landlord. Look, don't get me wrong. There are some great landlords in Swale who do look after their tenants, and I do think it's worth pointing that out. But there are also some very unscrupulous landlords who don't. And when we actually, like the first time we managed to get someone under this new act, I expect there to be a really big comms campaign behind that to show the work that, yourself, your team have done, but also to deter other landlords from trying to use some of these, some of the tricks that exist to treat people badly, because renting is incredibly expensive at the moment. And I think someone said earlier, people deserve to live in a decent home. This is Britain. It is the 21st century. Can we have some assurances that comms campaign is really going to... you can't promise that the comms campaign will work, but can we have some assurances that comms campaign is going to go out and we are going to try to deter people from behaving like that in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for raising this issue. I completely agree with that. And I've done many times, actually, since I got here. And I've done many times where I used to work in London Council as well. So every enforcement action we've taken, like issuing civil penalty, we issue comms. I think I've done about 3 or 4 already in the past. Actually, I will do that for the next sort of round of enforcement is coming as well. So currently we are trying to actually build the capacity within the section, trying to upscale our officer as well, so that and also trying to update the policy that needs to be in place so that we are ready to start on the day one. And as I said, even though there is actually quite disappointing sort of support from the government about the burden funding, hopefully if we got adequate resources, adequate skills, and we can actually build on that skills to trying to, in the long term, do a lot more. It's not just about the rental rights, but also about the licensing schemes, about the smaller HMO, for example, that are actually mushering around this sort of area, so we can actually look at. But we need upfront sort of investment for us to try to make sure that we can are able to deliver that in the long term. And hopefully, that's my vision, is trying to sustain our enforcement work, trying to invest into the sort of the money generated from the enforcement and expand the team so that we can do a lot more work and improve the condition.
No, thank you for that. That's really good to know. Of course, as well as it acting as a deterrent, my other hope is that the comms campaign, particularly around housing and renters' rights and stuff, will encourage other people that are being mistreated to come forwards, because they actually think that something's going to get done about it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Nundy. I think there's also some comms around just the change in legislation generally, because there'll be people who are doing things which are perfectly legal at the moment that won't know that they become problematic. So I agree with you. I think there's just huge amounts of comms that's necessary. Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really excited by the Renters' Right Act and this policy. In the past, in my work life, I've come across some awful privately rented properties where there was very little you could do but to try and gently encourage the landlord to improve matters. So this policy is very clear. I like that supposed ignorance of the law is not a way to avoid getting fined if, for instance, the landlord has many properties. And I also like that the fines will hopefully pay for the staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly welcome this, and I think I heard someone propose the recommendations quite a while back, and I'm more than happy to second those. It's a great idea, and utilising what is essentially a standard policy across England makes that education piece that much easier when dealing not only with the landlords but with the renters. It is welcome. It brings the private sector closer to the standards that are required of the social and affordable rent sector, which is welcome. On page 96 of the agenda, or 10 of the policy, it does still need us to insert our email address and physical address. But beyond that, I think it's ready to go, oven ready, and let's get it going.
Let's not describe things as oven ready. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. My goodness, I'm speaking a lot tonight. It's like I like the sound of my own voice. First of all, San, that this report, this policy is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much to you and your team. It's definitely something that we should all be very proud of, this policy. I agree with Councillor Nundy. I hope we will publicise the ones that don't play by the rules and get fined. We have got many in our communities out there that are possibly suffering in silence, and this will, in a way, give them a voice. I would hope that this sort of information is available to all of our residents. Perhaps promoting it at the road shows might be a good idea. Getting our other community organisations on board with this one as well to promote it. It's all right us knowing. It's all right the landlords knowing, but it's the tenants that we need to make sure that they know the help is out there and they're not alone. So thank you, Chair. Thank you, San.
I think that's a really solid suggestion. Thanks, Councillor Watson, that we do some comms out the road shows, because it's an ideal kind of opportunity to talk to people about it, isn't it? Great. Well, we have a proposal and a seconder of the recommendations. Are we happy to take the recommendations on block? Great. Well, all in favour then, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. And huge thanks to San and the team, because I know that's been quite a significant amount of work. So thank you very much for your time. Great. I've done a thing where I've flipped all my papers around the wrong way. Okay, item number 11 is the temporary accommodation scrutiny report. Clearly, there's not been a lot of time since we last scrutinised temporary accommodation, but this is your opportunity to ask any questions or make any comments about the forward movement of temporary accommodation and spend. So, Charlotte, is there anything you wanted to say about it before I open the floor?
I think the only thing I would add is the question at the last committee was to add some information about the affordable housing pipeline information. So that is in additional to the normal elements. Thank you.
Councillor Braun.
I just wanted to quickly say thank you to Charlotte and her team. And also, headline figure this year cost us 350,000 less for the same time period as it did the year before.
Councillor Harrison, and then Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for the information, Charlotte, which I did ask for about affordable homes delivered. And I know that the majority of councillors only read the papers of the committee that they're on, if they bother reading them, to be frank. And that is unfortunate, because these figures are actually very stark. There are, end of Q3, 69 households that have been in temporary accommodation for 2 years or more. And that is absolutely sad. And then you look at the affordable homes delivered and the lets from the register. You know, there is a circle, and we actually need to square that circle, because we seem to do things with no thought to the consequences. And I am, of course, thinking about planning and, you know, playing to the gallery and people who, well, we don't want it here. Yeah, but that's not a planning ground. You know, I know that there's over 800 households on the waiting list on the Isle of Sheppey. Now, if they're lucky, it might take them 10 years, because the number that's on the register as we speak, or as the report was written, whenever it was written, last week before, it's changing daily. And it isn't going down daily, it is going up and up and up. So, you know, I just think, like, where the hell will it end up? But and I do have a question here, and I should have put my pen mark on it, shouldn't I? But it was about the I'll say the unallocated to RPs. We have a number of areas that we're not alone. It's right across the country where there's all these thousands of houses across the country with no RP next to them. So here we are, page 135. There are not RPs prepared to purchase the properties, second bullet point down. I know that the staff work their socks off on this. They are incredible, cajoling, persuading, you know, jollying along. But what can we do to, you know, should we get the RPs in here and lock the door? Not with that tea that I use a lot, but perhaps something a bit less. Because unless, and maybe I should raise it on that last item, Chair. You know, if they won't build on all these sites, but there is an incredible number that we could be homing people in if only you would agree to do it. You know, we have all these registered providers in our borough. They need to get together and say, well, okay, you know, is 100, which 5 are you taking, which 10 are you taking, and try and persuade them some way, somehow. But I do think, I know the staff really are working themselves into the ground on this, because they truly believe in the work that they're doing. But I say, is there anything that we can do? Because it is becoming more and more of a problem. And of course, the other part of the problem, which is not this committee, but I'm going to be taking it up elsewhere, is, oh, well, no, we'll give you, what do they, I can't remember the terminology, but, well, instead of doing that affordable, we'll give you £40,000. £40,000 wouldn't pay for the front door.
Charlotte? Yeah, I think this is a national problem, and particularly probably a South East regional problem as well. We know sort of the financials and the business planning of registered providers. They are investing a lot more in their own stock. A lot of them are running their own land-led schemes rather than taking on a number of homes from development. So I think it's a very complex problem, and it is something that we do need to unpick. We also need to engage with Homes England, who are, you know, they have their affordable homes programme and are looking to unblock, particularly around Section 106s, and we need to work through those. I say the team do a lot of work to try and secure registered providers. There are a lot more for-profit registered providers coming on stream that are obviously a registered provider, but sometimes the rents, particularly when you're doing an affordable rent at 80% of the market rate and the market rate's gone up, that does mean that sometimes those rents are still not affordable to some of our residents and particularly some of the individuals that we're working with. And as all committee members will be aware, there's a range of affordable housing products. So some of this could be shared ownership, some of it could be first homes as well. So it is quite a complex problem. We also know that I think Councillor Martin mentioned at the last meeting actually about the amount of registered providers who don't actually have a development team anymore. So even if they were interested, for them to be able to scale up and have the resources and capacity to deliver are also quite limited. So there is more work that we need to do. We don't like to take commuted sums. We if we couldn't secure a registered provider, we could end up with a commuted sum, but how we work through that. So there is definitely a piece of work we are doing within the team. Had quite a few meetings over the last few weeks around whether we review our housing allocations policy, are we targeting the right people, how are we using our affordable housing stock, and the pipeline coming into that is also really important because unfortunately some of the people that have been in temporary accommodation the longest are those with quite unique needs, and that's whether they're a large family, whether they need certain adaptive properties that just the housing register process is not providing at the moment, which is why they're kind of stuck. And how do we unblock those, and is there opportunities for some of those negotiations to take place to alleviate some of our problems as well, and take a bit more of a holistic view of the whole process. But yeah, it's frustrating, I think, when we have secured those through Section 106 agreements and they're at risk until we have a registered provider in place to deliver them.
Thanks, Chair. The other point, and Charlotte very carefully didn't say members butt out, because I did ask the question, what could members do to help? Obviously butt out. Perhaps you could clarify that. The other point was, I'm asking a question, I'm not commenting on it, but on this little table, which I've lost, there was number outside statutory duty, RSI funded, Rough Sleeper Initiative funded. So I haven't, you are sleeping rough. I've got no duty to give you a home. I'm trying to get, but I can give you a hot water bottle. I don't know. I want to understand what that is.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Councillor Harrison. So they are individuals we are providing temporary accommodation to, that we have no statutory responsibility to do that. So we are funding that through what was our former rough sleeping grant. As you'll know, that's now all merged into one grant for the next financial year. So again, that is a choice about how that money is spent. But I think it's clear to say we are providing accommodation to those individuals. If we had to go just to our statutory minimum and only provide that, then we would not be doing that. That's a choice.
And just finally, because I know we've had issues over the years, we are we very clear in Swale that it's Swale residents, whether they're residents in a property or residents sleeping on a bench, we're not a soft touch for all and sundry to rock up from other boroughs. Am I correct?
Yeah, so we have eligibility criteria that they would need to meet. Obviously, there are exceptions to that, such as fleeing domestic abuse, children leaving care and things like that. There are some, some different elements for those, but you would need to meet the local, local residency criteria. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Nundy and then Councillor Palmer, please. And apologies, I've skipped over Councillor Watson again. Councillor Watson, then Councillor Nundy. I know, I feel so bad about it. Right, Councillor Watson, you are next, and then it's Councillor Nundy.
I know, Chair. It's so rare that I speak, really. So I can quite understand that. Again, I will be quick. So the thing that I will always bring up is the affordable housing delivered. We're going to be so under our numbers, and it is quite sad to see. I mean, it's great we've got all those in the pipeline, but we need more affordable housing because we've got the need out there, clearly. The roughs. First, can I just say, Charlotte, thank you to you and the team again for your reports. It's always a pleasure scrutinising your reports, so thank you. Cake in the post. So obviously on 2.9, we currently have 11 rough sleepers on the street, 23 in accommodation. I've noticed a couple of new ones on Sittingbourne High Street just today. And we know that the numbers will increase as the weather gets warmer. So I suppose it's quite good that we've got something in place. So if we get the winter shelter, that'll be really good. It's all joined up thinking here. And also, I also noticed we've got an increased demand for hospital discharge support and suitable accommodation. Can you give us a little bit of information about that, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so sometimes the individual's home's not suitable to be returned to. Sometimes they don't have a home. So again, we could have somebody that's rough sleeping that ends up in hospital. So our safeguarding team have done a lot of work around hospital discharge. I think one of the things it's fair to say is supported housing has diminished over the last decade without a doubt. There's been quite a lot that's been decommissioned. Yeah. We are finding, our temporary accommodation is very much general needs accommodation. There isn't really any support apart from some of our rough sleeping services for that. So trying to find that balance where they don't quite meet the social services threshold, but also have those needs. So there is regular meetings with particularly Medway Hospital discharge team around trying to work out suitable accommodation where we do have a responsibility. There's some quite robust debates about where those responsibilities do lie. I mean, obviously, and some of them do sit with us, but with an outside care package potentially coming in. But unfortunately, we have seen, not huge numbers, but they're the more difficult ones to find suitable temporary accommodation and also suitable move-on plans for those individuals as well. So it becomes, they might not be huge in number, but they're huge in resource and complexity to sort of move through the pathway there.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Nundy.
This might be an impossible question to ask, but I'm going to ask it. Or an impossible question to answer. I'm going to find it quite easy to ask the question, actually. How much do you think the work that we've just discussed around renters' right is going to affect the because one of the issues with temporary accommodation is people becoming homeless and needing temporary accommodation. But if we've got new legislation in place that's going to potentially prevent people from being evicted, stop people from becoming homeless in the first place, I know you can't, there'll be no data on that yet, but how much do you think that's going to affect it based on the amount of evictions that take place that your team deal with and the reasons for those evictions?
Yeah, so I think, Section 21 notices are probably the third highest reason for somebody to contact us for their housing need. That I think we've felt like there's a little bit of an uptick at the moment because people are getting their house in order if they need to, or landlords are resolving issues that maybe they've ignored or kind of want to maybe get rid of their own stock, etc., etc. And I know our landlord manager has been having numerous conversations just this week with landlords with portfolios to say, we'll work with you with the new legislation. Don't evict all your tenants now and sell up and trying to keep people in the market as well. I think we will see an increase to start with, like we are now. We are hoping, and I think we always like hold on to any hope that we can get in homelessness, that the Section 21s will go because they will be illegal, and that actually there is a bit more security and things like the rent charges and all of the other things that are covered in the previous policy. But there are still grounds for taking your property back. And I think lots of times Section 21s are issued because it's the easy route. You know, if you've got antisocial tenants, to go down the antisocial behaviour clauses, the level of evidence you need are you know, they'll go, I don't need to do that, I can just issue a Section 21. So there'll be other grounds that they may still apply. We will need to monitor what comes forward. But we are hoping that it does, over time, you know, regularise the private rented sector and put it on a more firmer footing, really, is our hope.
Thanks, Charlotte. Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Harrison brought up the affordable housing issue, and I think it particularly probably is bad on Sheppey, I must admit, but often in rural communities you have an application go in, 25, 40 houses, and then part of the selling point for that with the public and at planning is the affordable housing element, and then it's turned out it doesn't materialise for various reasons. So I think there's various issues there, so I agree with Councillor Harrison, so I think that's been covered. And the other one at 2.11 of the report, when I first read it, my heart dropped a bit because I thought you was talking about park homes. So it's not clear, and I think once you realise what when it said every winter, then I thought, yeah, I'll do again in winter. It's the holiday parks, and I think we should be clear to say either a holiday park, which has temporary approval, and park homes, residential parks, which have 12 months all year round. So it's just terminology, and I think people reading it don't quite. I didn't at first, but that's just an observation. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Palmer. I've got Councillor Martin, Councillor Bowen, Councillor Gould, and then I'm going to close the discussion on.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Charlotte, for another detailed report on this one. Oh, it's so depressing, isn't it? But we can see that the interventions that we have taken previously have worked. Yes, they haven't reduced the spend as much as we would like them to, but it is because demand has gone up as opposed to our spending per unit going up, which is really welcome. And I'm sure when we review further down the road, according to the forward plan, whether there's scope for any further capital investment to have more of our own stock, that will be something we look at. Similar to Councillor Harrison, it's that affordable pipeline that concerns me. 189 homes secured with no RP yet. Either through the Kent Housing Group or through ourselves, getting the chief executives of the housing associations that currently serve Swale in this chamber to answer some questions would be very much appreciated at this point. I mean, I know the firm I work for is not serving Swale going forward. Their strategy is Maidstone, Maidstone, Maidstone. But then you'd expect that from a firm that was Maidstone Borough Council's housing stock to an extent. We haven't seen anything of Southern, and they do not have a development team anymore. We've seen very little out of Moat or Hyde, with the exception of their land-led sites for the last couple of years. We need to find out what's going on, and perhaps leveraging the council's own partnership with Counties and Capital, who seem to be doing much more in terms of the development side for housing associations to secure landlords, may also be of benefit. And dare I say it, welcoming in with open arms all those pension companies that want affordable housing for their last 5 years of people's pension schemes as a secure investment is something else that we could again look at. We looked at it previously. It wasn't right 6 years ago, but then we had the RPs taking the stuff on 6 years ago. Now we don't. So perhaps time to look again. But beyond that, we can see the work that the team are doing. I will never have anything said against Rebecca Walker in terms of her conversations with RPs and convincing, cajoling, sometimes bullying them into taking stock that they don't really want. But she does a damn good job of it. So just to get 623 of them with an actual RP on board is an achievement of itself at the moment, and that has to be a big pat on the back.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Chair. Just some comments on it. Coming back to, I think, echoing what Councillor Harrison said on the length of time in temporary accommodation, the 2 years plus. I don't expect it from this, but I'm going to hazard a guess that, as mentioned earlier, some of those will likely include families with children. Thank you. And that comes back to, this is temporary accommodation, but something that actually, I think, benefits families is a place to call home. And temporary accommodation is not a home. To have the security of a place that they know they're going to go back to, not only tonight or next week or next month or next year, makes them sleep easier in their beds at night. And with respect, temporary accommodation, you can't get that quite such a good night's sleep on that score. I agree on about table 7, the point about affordable homes delivered. It's unless we can either get 92, which will bring us up to the 22-23 figure delivered in the Q4, we ain't going to be anywhere near that. That is sad. Come on, developers, help us out a bit if we can. On the actual reports, this is going to sound critical, but I'm doing it from a place of goodness and hopefully from constructive. On the part about section 6, where we have all those, the implications.
Can you have the page number, please, Councillor Bowen? Sorry.
135. It's the last bit, the implications. I don't quite get health and well-being as an example. But we've just been saying about people living in temporary accommodation. There has got to be, surely, an implication on people's health and well-being of living in temporary accommodation. There has got to be an equality and diversity impact on this. We must have the figure somewhere. Is it disproportionate in terms of some either religious or ethnic groups which are in temporary accommodation? And where do we move to the point of none at this stage to actually, there is an implication of this and we need to start potentially thinking about it. Which brings me on to I think the last point on I don't think anyone's mentioned it, the financial monitoring. An anticipated overspend of £400,000. And an underspend of 220,000 on salaries. Now, some people will say, actually, we'll just counter them off and it's not as bad as it looks. I beg to differ. We need to really understand where this is being driven from, because we can't sustain this, or we need to be better at looking at what potential other options there are to actually try and get either those costs down or really factored in, because I think most organisations, if you went to somebody and said, yeah, I'm nearly 400 grand, 30% out budget, what are you thinking? That's not budget planning. And I get it, it is there are loads of known unknowns in this. But until I would like to see, and whether it's P&R, but it's probably more here, again, try a bit of a deep dive into what makes up that amount, and what, again, blue sky thinking, could be potentially doable. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And that's an absolute fair challenge, and that's probably what I've spent most of the last 3 months looking at. So to be rest assured that we are diving into that quite deeply at the moment. So I think from the analysis that we have done today, there's a few factors at play. So to start with, we've had vacancies in some staffing where we've had the restructure and we've been trying to get up to full capacity. Our underspend on staffing salaries in January wasn't 11%, it was like 2%. So we need the staff to work with the individuals to move people through the system. So that's one of the issues. So yes, we have saved on staff, but that isn't helpful in this instance. We need the staff to do the work to help people move on. One of the other factors is our demand's gone up since about October. We've seen steady increases in contacts, and not every contact makes an application and moves through the process, but the conversion rates are probably very, very similar in terms of that. So I think when we were looking at January and February's figures, we had over 100 more approaches than the previous time last year. So again, we know we've got more people contacting us. That will end up with more placements. What we're also finding is that, there's only a few ways you get out of temporary accommodation. And that is into the private rented sector, which is hugely unaffordable for a lot of our client group. And for us to be able to discharge our duty, it has to be a reasonable, it has to be a suitable move on. We can't just say, oh, go and rent there, don't worry about it, because we wouldn't be discharging our duty and that wouldn't be appropriate. Obviously into the social housing sector, and again, you've seen the data in terms of the lets and what the new pipelines coming, that's falling down. And the other way is that they, we find them intentionally homeless, so we don't owe them a duty, we end our duty with them, they get evicted from temporary accommodation, or they abandon, or or some other circumstance means that they're not in the system. But really, we've only got two ways to move out, and that's the private rented sector, which is unaffordable, and the social housing sector, which isn't providing us the stock that we need. So we're ending up holding a lot of individuals, and we need to do more work with them to move them on. So we're doing a piece of work at the moment where we've everybody's categorised into seven categories of types of temporary accommodation. About just over a third of them are very easy people. We don't have a lot of easy people, but a third of them are general, what we'd probably call, can probably sort themselves out with a bit of direction. They've just found themselves in the circumstances that have got them in temporary accommodation. But, we just need to find the right landlord, or we need the housing register element to come forward and them to get a let. But we also need to keep them proactively bidding. We need to make sure that they're not getting bypassed when they're offered a social home from the letting agents. So there's a lot of work to keep the momentum going. There may be work around the debt that they've incurred is there something we can do there to support them with better budgeting? Sometimes it's really difficult to budget when you haven't got a lot of money and what costs are. So we're seeing more and more clients with negative budgets. So that all, and is there employment opportunities? So this is when it taps into a lot of the work that SJ mentioned around the developing new framework around how we're supporting individuals. Mm-hmm. So that can be quite comprehensive. But then we've got lots of people that are very, very, have a lot of complex needs. We have some people that need adapted properties that just aren't there, and also large families that, again, to get a 4-bedroom plus property come through the housing register is not a common occurrence. And obviously then within temporary accommodation, they also cost more. So we are looking to do a wider piece of work over the next couple of months, so we don't sustain this overspend, and looking at, can we move the easy people through? Is there something that we can do? We are going to undertake a bit of a review of the allocations policy, and bring it back to this committee to see, again, is there things that we can do with allocations that will assist us in moving people through temporary accommodation more? That could also have a adverse effect, so we need to try and balance those things out. So yeah, we've pretty much been analysing every single person in temporary accommodation to look at what we can do. But we do need our registered providers' support. We do need to work out, like, even how long voids are taking to turn around in our own temporary accommodation, in housing associations. We can have a let a household under offer within temporary accommodation, and it can be months before they get into their property. All the meantime, we're paying the bill of their accommodation. And of course, because I have to mention it because it's just one of my bugbears, you know, when we look at the housing benefit levels that we get for nightly let accommodation, we are still benchmarked at 2011 rates, 90% of 2011 rates. So even if we got today's rates, our costs would significantly reduce. We can get today's rates on our own accommodation, our own houses, but again, we're still working through the true cost of those, and we will again bring that report forward. So absolutely, you're right. It's a complex issue. We are diving into it deeply. We will be bringing some reports forward, but equally, you know, we're very much in the thick of it. So the committee's support in scrutinising that and asking those questions to say, you know, are you looking at that right thing, or we would like to understand this area a little bit more. You know, that helps us maybe take a different view and a different challenge. So that, you know, that is also really helpful to us. So it's welcome. So thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte. And just to reiterate as well, we have written to government a couple of times saying this is a completely unsustainable situation. So yeah, Councillor Gould.
Just a couple of questions. First of all, you said there's 623 in the pipeline. Just wondering how long that pipeline is, and what the sort of timescale of delivery of those, or is that a very much how long was a piece of string question?
So obviously it depends what sites are being built out. So some of the larger sites we know can have delivery periods for quite extended periods of time. So the 623 are whether they are already on site. So like we're still getting homes through like Stones Farm, for example. We're still getting new properties through on the housing register through that, even though that site's being built out for quite a few. Well, Spring Acres now, isn't it? Still call it the planning version. So some of those are just starting on site. So again, we could have a number of years for delivery. We do have a breakdown of each site, and so therefore which planning application it relates to. But again, we're dependent on the developer hitting the key milestones and when they come over to us, or if it's a portion of land given to the registered provider for them to build out. So yeah, it is a little bit of how long's a piece of string, but we do have the background information that we can share for you.
My other question is, picking on what you're saying about there being some people in temporary accommodation who are particularly difficult to place, it almost sounds as a sort of bit of a market failure for people in those sort of situations. And whether if we are going to have a further phase of purchase of properties, whether we need to look at the type of properties that we aim to get, maybe with some of these people in mind, so that actually, you know, they would be a big win, because presumably if they're the more expensive families to house, if we can actually do that, then actually that would help a great deal. And whether a sort of a targeted approach to, if there hopefully will be a further round of properties, might be something that feeds into that process.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that. I think, you know, not that they're conversations we like to have, but there is sometimes conversations say we don't know how these people are going to leave temporary accommodation, because particularly if they have rent arrears from a previous social tenancy, that they therefore can't access that and can't move into the private rented sector, there's very limited options. So sometimes we are looking at quite either very creative solutions about how we overcome that, or looking for more suitable longer term temporary accommodation, and therefore what does that look like. But yeah, we can certainly include that in any review.
Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you everybody for all of those helpful questions. I think something that we do well is scrutinise temporary accommodation in the council. So thank you for your input. Can we agree to note that report, please? Well, I had said that Councillor Gould was going to be the last speaker.
Sorry, I was going to second the proposal that my colleague put forward.
What was the proposal?
to get all the chief execs of the RPs in.
Oh, fine. Yeah, well, we can do that. I'm up for that. Yeah, great. So that's a proposal on the floor. Seconded. Was that proposed by Councillor Martin and seconded Councillor Harrison? Do you have a note of what that proposal is? It's just to invite the chief executives of the RPs to come and speak to us. We can look into organising that for sure. I think that's a good idea. All in favour of that proposal, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And can we note that report? Thank you. Right, agenda point 11. Yeah. Oh, yes. An interest for yourself, presumably. Oh, fine. Okay, so agenda point 11 is speaking around the update on Cockleshell Walk. So up until now, Swell Rainbow Homes has taken the lead on this, but there's been kind of a change in the financial landscape, and we need access to grants to make it happen. So the council is now best positioned to continue the scheme. And so what the recommendations are is that we note the update, and then to recommend to Policy and Resources the closure of Swell Rainbow Homes Local Housing Company, and then to discuss the future governance arrangements of managing the project. Charlotte, did you want to introduce this?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'm not going to go into a lot of depth because I think we've all lived through most of this. And as the Chair has said, we had intended that this project was originally run through the local housing company, Swell Rainbow Homes, but that was when it was going to be, we had a choice on tenure, it was going to wash its face financially, and we've not had that opportunity. So I'm really pleased that we are in a situation where we are moving forward with this project now. We have secured quite a sizable grant from Homes England's Affordable Homes Programme, and let the contract as well, or Policy Resources let the contract earlier this financial year. So we are in a position now where we are live on site technically. You probably won't see very much at the moment because obviously there's that preparation work. But it is actually really happening, which is, I think, quite exciting. And following on from the previous conversation and agenda item, all these homes are really, really valuable, and it just shows how difficult it is to bring this type of product forward and the challenges that we have experienced going forward. I think it's just really important now that it is a large project, a large capital project for the council, and also the council has become a registered provider again, which was very easy because it was literally an email, so nothing's normally that easy. However, to make sure that we're doing it properly, we do need to make sure we have the whole policy suite that the regulator requires, and to make sure that everything is in place. I think it's also probably quite important to note that the completions of the homes are going to be aligning with LGR, which is probably not a great thing, but it will also mean that once we know the geographies of where we're going, that whoever we merge with are likely to already be a stockholding authority, and therefore there's some joint work that we can do as part of that, rather than us just starting from scratch, and we can lean on some of that work if that all goes ahead. So yes, as the Chair has said, the recommendation is to dissolve the company because it's no longer the vehicle that we need to take it forward. But it's really important that we do have good scrutiny in terms of the construction phase, but also making sure that the council as a landlord is exemplary and is compliant, and we have the appropriate policies and everything in place. So hence, we would like your involvement. And it was just really a discussion of what that involvement looks like. And I've put a few suggestions in there. That doesn't have to be. I don't think we necessarily want to go back to the lottery conversation and have completely new versions. But, it could form a substantive agenda items as part of the main committee. It could be a subcommittee. It could be a member working group that reports back into this committee, or some sort of arrangement like that.
Great, thanks, Charlotte. I've got Councillor Martin, then Councillor Harrison, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm hopeful that you will indulge me a little bit on this particular one. The background says that this all started in October 2020. This all started in May 2019. The very first meeting that I had as a fresh-faced new councillor, and God, that feels an awful long time ago, with now Honorary Alderman Glyn Whelan with Charlotte, I believe it was the second thing out of Glyn's mouth after good morning, was when are we going to build some houses? And I'm not sure that I was that far behind Glyn in saying, when are we going to build some houses? And yes, Rainbow Homes came to be in 2020, in October. But before that, we'd already done the process of, could we do this as a council? And at the time, we didn't have the skills to do it. There wasn't the funding to do it. There wasn't the support from central government for us to be able to do it that way. Then it was, can we do it as a joint venture with one of the housing associations? And we had 2 or 3 of the housing associations come in and meet with us and have discussions. And each time it turned out that basically they wanted us to pay a load of money and then we wouldn't receive anything back. And they'd have some nice new stock on land that we used to own. And in actual fact, I seem to recall that Neil was working for Optivo at the time. I think it was Optivo, as was my line manager at work working for Optivo, and they were in the room discussing it. Lo and behold, we're now in a position 7 years on where we're finally going to get some houses by 2028, hopefully, assuming that the build goes to scale, goes on time, nothing goes wrong, we don't find something in the piling. It's been a very long process, and I can't help but feel that way. But I think before I move on anywhere near discussing the future governance, one, it's been a privilege to be involved in the project in the first place, but I think there's a lot of thank yous that we have to make sure are on the record. I think we have to have thank you to the officers that have been involved in the process. So yes, Charlotte and Emma, who have done a huge amount of work and sat on the board of Rainbow Homes and Christ knows how many hours of filling in ridiculous forms. Dare I say it, Joe Millard, who's been our company secretary from day one. Lisa Fillery, who has kept us very financially honest, certainly more so than our previous 151 officer to some extent, and to Lorraine for arranging an awful lot of the meetings. I think we've also got to give thanks to Neil and the team at Counties and Capital that's changed a lot over that period, but again have put a huge amount of support in to get us to this stage. All the councillors over the years that have been on the shareholder panel, particularly Councillors Perkin and Harrison, who have chaired it at various points and again kept the board honest, very honest, and asked some very awkward questions at some really inconvenient times sometimes, but that's kept us where we needed to be. And also Councillor Bonney, okay, not in this room, but very important member of the board, and to Roger Truelove and Glyn Whelan, the 2 honorary aldermen who started this process with us. I think we owe a huge debt of thanks to them for the work that they put in. But it is a positive story, and that's the real key. Okay, we started out wanting 150 homes, we're getting 51. We've had a pandemic since then. It changed things a lot. 51 new social homes, the first new social homes owned by this council, built by this council since 1990. Everyone in this room can be proud of that, because everyone in this room has played a part in it. So that's great. And hopefully we can do many more going forward. Maybe of those 189 that we just heard in the last report, maybe we can have those as well, depending on who our partner is. I'm sure Councillor Harrison will have a far, far better idea of what to do governance-wise than I at this point. Thank you for indulging me, but this is a really positive project and I think the council can be proud of it, and certainly our officers should be whacking this everywhere they possibly can.
Chair, can I move standing orders?
Oh, you heard me whispering that, Lloyd. Yeah, whatever. Can we agree to extend standing orders, please? Yeah, it is, yeah. Councillor Harrison, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with everything that Councillor Martin, I don't do councillor, but Councillor Martin has said, except that obviously he didn't mention Councillor Ben J. Martin, who was the cabinet member when it started. Glad to see he's still with us, and I bet you didn't think it would take this long, but I would like to thank him personally for all the hard work that he put in over the years on this, and the fact that it's finally come to fruition just shows what a change of government can do. Having a government there that is supportive, and if you want to put other nice things in the minutes so that we can get them down and say, look, we really appreciate what you're doing, love. Give us some more money. I don't mind. Yeah, so absolutely fantastic. We should be really, really proud. So on the governance, what I've read this a few times and thought, okay, what do we need to do? What I would like to propose is that we set up a subcommittee. And under the terms of reference, the first thing that said subcommittee would do would be not manage, that is not our job. Monitor and scrutinise the, what did you call it, the project build stuff? Yeah, something like that. But also for the subcommittee to have the ability to set up task and finish groups to look at the streams, the work streams that we would need to be involved in going forward. There will be a whole host of policies that we will need before, long before the first person moves in, people move in. I don't, there is, to my mind, there is such a lot of work that I don't think it's, and we'll have one working group that do everything under the sun. They will move their beds in here. I think that the subcommittee, which I would hope that you chair, would have that ability to say, right, so we need to think about what work streams we need, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and that we would open it to not just our committee, but cross-council, to open it up to all councillors, because whilst the people who sit on this committee are absolutely committed to housing and health and communities, but we're talking housing, there will be members on other committees who have a particular interest, expertise in X field or Y field. And I'm not precious about that. So that would be my proposal: a subcommittee, but within the term TOR that you can set up work groups, task and finish work groups for specific work streams.
Thanks, Councillor Harrison. I think that sounds incredibly sensible. What I particularly like about that idea is that the subcommittee is made of members from this committee, because I think there is some real value in the continuity of the project, in having people that have been involved in it for such a long time and keeping it within housing and health. We know that the LGA peer review said that this committee does really good scrutiny. So that continuity and that ability to scrutinise projects, I think, is really important, and it's something that we can definitely do within the committee. And I think you're completely right, there are councillors across the council that have incredible knowledge in various different areas that don't need to be involved in that subcommittee, but could definitely be very helpful for those task and finish groups. And yes, we will be calling them task and finish groups and not working groups, because we want tasks to finish. Okay, I've got Councillor Bowen and then Councillor Palmer, please. Councillor Martin is seconding. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Totally, I agree with Councillor Harrison. For me, it's a subcommittee of this committee, and the way I kind of picturing it, it's not that dissimilar to the PTPWG. That actually they do the piece of work, they feed into P&R. In this case, this subcommittee will feed into us. Otherwise, the meetings of this committee are going to be really taken over by this subject. And with all due respect, there's a lot of other things we need to be looking at as well. So absolutely endorse that as a subcommittee. Plus, also and within that, as Councillor Harrison says, I think a task and finish group is a very, very good title, because at this point, that in terms of setting up, there are going to be very specific activities, as you say, to get us to a point that then actually the subcommittee can then carry on taking forward on the long term. But there's going to be a lot of work in creating that sort of momentum. And then once the task finish group, they disband. Thank you very much. Your job's done. Disappear into the night. In terms of the planning, I agree with Councillor Martin. I hope that's the case, and let's fingers crossed they don't undiscover when they dig up the car park a corpse of a previous member of the royal family like they did was in Leicester. That could scupper a few things. My question, in terms of Rainbow Homes, do we need officially for all the directors to step down, resign, whatever you want to call it? In which case, if that is the case, can we tell them you need to resign the position? Because some may or may not be aware of it. That was it. Thank you.
So 2 points on there. I don't think I know that the council can disband the company, and therefore can remove directors at any point. So that can be done. It was also discussed at a recent board meeting, and I think all 4 directors were quite happy to step away because this is the right route to take it forward. And so there is consensus there anyway, but the council does have the power to remove people. Thank you. It's recommendation to, so this for here it's recommendation to PNR, because PNR have got the authority to disband the company, and there'll be a much more detailed report that goes to PNR around that.
Councillor Palmer. Sure, you're up.
No, I was going to recommend a subcommittee, so I'm quite fair with that. And I think Councillor Martin did sum up for the officers as well. And I know the hard work that Councillor Martin also put in to get it formed and drove it forward, which is appreciated by all, I think. Thank you.
So we're just trying to determine whether a subcommittee needs to have political balance. I think PTPWG is politically balanced.
Yes, they do.
They do.
Working groups don't.
Working groups
or task and finish groups
task
don't.
Task and finish groups don't. Subcommittees do. Yes. So yeah. So what I was our members have, just because I appreciate proposal 3 is to discuss the future governance arrangements and to manage the projects. I think there's a proposal on the table that it becomes a subcommittee, and then we have working groups under terms of reference that can go from other pools. I think that's sensible. There seems to be consensus about that. What my question would be is, I don't think we can nominate this evening, but with the committee's agreement, we will work out what those numbers look like and then ask for nominations outside of the meeting. Is there agreement with that? Yeah. Councillor Braun, you've got your hand up.
Just like on something, obviously I don't know what everyone's intentions are and what the size of the subcommittee would be, but if it doesn't work out numbers wise to have certain people on there, on PTPWG, Lloyd's Group have given a seat to Mike Whiting, so that is something we can constitutionally do if it's needed.
So I think it would be. I don't think it would be prudent to get into that conversation this evening. I think it's an interesting question. What I think we'll do is look to the recommendations, and then there will be a discussion about numbers, what that looks like politically, especially as we have new political balance going through at the moment. And we will then ask for group appointments to that committee. Is that agreed with everybody? Yeah. Councillor Bowen.
The only slight caveat that I'd suggest thinking about is, do you want to also build in that within that has to be either the chair or vice chair of this committee as well? I would suggest.
Oh, yeah, I think that's sensible. And there will obviously be people who I would really like to be involved in other bits of it that would be precluded in that, but I think that's probably right. Councillor Kavanagh.
I think we also need to decide how many people are in the committee, because we can't work out the balance if we don't know the full number, for 7 or whatever.
Chair, can we delegate this to you to take outside the meeting?
Yeah,
We could be till 11 o'clock.
Is that okay? Just because I think there's broad consensus, and we'll just have that discussion, and we'll do appointments after that if everyone is happy with that. Great. Okay. Well, unless anyone else has anything more to add, can I propose the recommendations on block? Apologies, Councillor Harrison. I've completely forgotten what you've said.
Sorry.
Oh, yes, on the governance model.
Number 3
Yeah.
is, so 1 and 2 would stand, and number 3
Okay.
would be to agree to the setting up of a subcommittee from this committee.
Yeah. Okay. Would you propose that as an amendment to 3? We can then vote that through and then take them on block potentially.
Yeah. I propose that we set up a subcommittee to initially monitor and scrutinise the build, but also to have the ability to set up task and finish groups to work on the various work streams that will be coming up. Said task and finish groups, not necessarily only from the Housing, Health and Communities Committee, but from right across the council,
Yeah.
utilising all members' skills.
Mhm.
And Ben agreed to second that. Thanks.
Great. Can we? So that's an amendment to 3. Yes, Councillor Bowen.
Don't disagree with that at all. My only caveat I would suggest is I can't see where the relationship with that work group committee in terms of reporting to this committee. So could we factor in whether it's every quarter or as needed, that the subcommittee reports to this committee on their progress? Yeah. Otherwise, they could be working completely on their own.
So I think that would probably come under the first meeting when we discuss terms of reference for the subcommittee, like what the reporting schedule looks like. I don't think we would build that into a recommendation here. We could use terms of reference to that in the subcommittee. Okay, cool. Okay, well, there's an amendment on the table. It's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. Proposal, you have 3 proposals, one of which is as amended. Can we have a vote on those 3 on block, please? Oh yeah, I'll propose from the chair. Councillor Martin seconded. All those in favour, please. That's unanimous again. Right, that is the end of the meeting. Thank you ever so much, members. It's been a very